So welcome to this video on ways of knowing. Um, there are different ways of knowing in the West. We talk about the thinking mind. Generally, that refers to the brain, or more specifically, the left brain. When we talk about IQ as a form of intelligence, the ability to think critically about things, not just accept every thought by itself, but to actually evaluate and analyze our thoughts, hold them up to other thoughts. What does society say? What does the world say? What's the evidence for something? And to come up then with um, either solutions or philosophies or ideas. I mean, there isn't really a concrete truth per se, there's consensual reality. So, even in science, a lot of the kind of theories are theories until proved otherwise. But so, we I guess with the thinking mind, that's one way of knowing things. And this isn't the same as uh, intelligence types and the 7 or 8 different types of intelligence types. This is ways of knowing. So we talk about the thinking mind, and you know, um, basically, that's one way of engaging with the world. And then, in a way, we could say that the left side of the brain connects into the heart too. So somebody who's very left brain will be very rational and evidence based and logical, mathematical even. It doesn't mean they don't feel, but their heart energy is connected to that side of the brain, so they feel through that side of the brain. And I think it's important to understand that in many ways. It's quite an individual side of the brain, though. It's what separates us from other things and people and gives us our unique individualness. So yeah, IQ. What do we say? The highest form of intelligence in the brain, the thinking mind, perhaps, is the ability to hold two opposite positions together. So again, and to be able to argue for both. And that moves away from what we call dualistic thinking into an appreciation of, maybe in the language, non-dual thinking or unity thinking, thinking that connects us rather than separates us. And that's really important from a spiritual point of view. Is your thinking something that is dualistic? So in order for me, say in religious terms, say in the Catholic tradition, traditionally, in order for someone to go to heaven, someone else has to go to hell. Or in order for someone to be good, someone else is bad. So this is kind of dualistic thinking. And that's how the lower brain functions. And, I think one of the maturing of our thinking minds is the ability to move beyond this polarization, this dualistic thinking, into non-dual unity thinking. So it's okay to understand, yes, there's good and bad behaviors, but all people are intrinsically spiritual and so on. And there's no good or bad people, there's only good or bad behaviors. So it's really important to be able to bring opposites together in a way that gives our thinking a maturity. And that often takes years of development, for some people never. Um, and it's I'm not sure how well that's taught in our society necessarily. So IQ is one way of knowing things, and obviously there's the pyramid of knowing. Maslow, well, um, not Maslow's pyramid of needs, but Bloom's taxonomy is a really good, if you want to Google that, pyramid of how our critical thinking develops from simple apprehension to understanding, comprehension, critical thinking, challenging, and so on. So Bloom's taxonomy is a really important tool to evaluate our thinking mind and our intelligence and way of knowing there. If we move into the heart, then this is another way of knowing things. Yeah, we call the heart in actual fact, the capacity of the heart seems to be bigger than the thinking mind. So the feeling brain is here in the heart. We feel emotions, we feel love, we feel all sorts of things. And our capacity to feel is really important because that's part of our human way of knowing things. So emotional intelligence, sometimes called EI, is really crucial. Again, the capacity to feel, to not suppress feelings, but to actually allow ourselves to feel, and to then to be able to bring the feeling perhaps into the domain of the mind and to go, now what's this feeling telling me? What's it for? So to feel it and then to use the mind to listen to its message. So that's really, really important. So we have emotional intelligence, which is more recognized today than it has, although the world still values critical mind IQ probably more than anything. But more and more emotional intelligence come into play as a way of knowing things, of feeling things. And then the other level of intelligence, which isn't really recognized because historically it was sublimated, is GQ, I call gut intelligence. So this is my instinctual feelings. Instinct is the word, not intuition, instinct. This is where my inner animal lives. That is really the probably more connected human part of me than my heart or my critical mind. It's the first brain that gets developed. It's the animistic brain that's connected into the parasympathetic nervous system of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, these different responses, gut responses. But it also connects into our instincts and, into our instinctual needs too. So the need for affectivity, for sexuality, for creativity, for vitality, for transcendence. These are instinctual drives, actually, not just needs, drives within us. So recognizing the way of knowing that connects to our gut is absolutely essential to be a grounded, embodied human being. Gut intelligence, gut instinct. What's my gut saying to me today? What's my gut? So, a simple example would be a bus is coming towards me on the street. I don't go into my heart and go, oh, I wonder how I feel about this, or up into my thinking mind and go, what should I think about this? Instead, the instinct in my gut kicks in, hopefully, and I jump out of the way without feeling or thinking. It's because it's the lowest brain, it is the most reactive part of our brain. So this is where anger and fight or flight response is cultivated and starts here in a part of ourselves that is below consciousness generally, below consciousness. So it can react to keep us safe in shocking survival, difficult situations. So, but what's important, obviously, is that I use all three ways of knowing to get a fuller picture of what's going on and what decisions I need to make. So what's my gut intelligence? What's it saying to me at the moment? How can I hear that? If I connect into my instincts or my inner animal, that's the metaphor I like to use. how is it today? Does it need to rest? Does it feel secure or frightened? Does it feel anxious? Um, or is there a flow there? Are my energies flowing? My vitality, my creativity, my sexual energy, is it all flowing? Um, and then obviously, if something is going on in the gut, I can then bring into the heart and go, how do I feel about that? If I bring maybe something that impacts me in the gut up into this emotional space or container, I can then access the emotion of it. Oh, gosh, I had a knot in my stomach, and now that I breathe that up into my heart, I'm accessing that as a feeling of fear or anxiety. I had an anxiety feeling in my stomach. I breathe that up into it's actually the emotional content is fear or anger, maybe. And then again, I bring in the thinking mind to say, well, now what's this telling me? What does it want me to know about the situation that I'm in? So this is a really healthy way of combining my intellectual intelligence, my emotional intelligence, and my gut intelligence together. And the gut is the instinctual one is the indigenous one. It's most connected to the earth. It's tribal. It's communal. It connects me into form, into my animal nature. And that's why often in our Western culture, we've civilized ourselves away from it, up into the heart, into the higher functions of our cognition, as if somehow that part of ourself was crude and uncivilized. And it can be. I mean, you can meet people who just operate out of the gut and don't have the higher functions of emotional or cognitive intelligence. And that if that's the case, they're very reactive people. They're just operating on their instincts. And it is uncivilized. It can be very uncivilized and crude, and there's a lot of drama and so on. You know. But then the opposite is true. You get some people who just operate in the heart. They don't use their thinking mind. They're not connected to their gut. Or people who are just in their head and they're not accessing their emotional capacities or grounding themselves in the instincts. So it's really important as not just ways of knowing, but to develop each of these faculties, recognizing that they can all work and support each other as ways of knowing, as ways of knowing. And of course, this video wouldn't be what it is if I didn't then talk about spiritual intelligence, which is sometimes called SQ, spiritual intelligence. What does that mean? So again, this is another form of intelligence. So I like to think that spiritual intelligence is about, for me, it's about listening to the energy, because energy is my spiritual makeup. So I'm listening to the energy, I'm feeling into the energy of what's going on. And so that's another way of knowing. That's another way of knowing. Now, how do you listen to energy? Well, you have to learn to feel it. You have to learn to listen to it. But even more important, it's like learning a new language. You need to have a dictionary. You can feel an energy all the time. We're energetic beings. We're connected energetically. But if there's no dictionary, well, then we don't necessarily understand what's going on. What's the energy trying to tell me? So I've developed a dictionary for myself over the years, still am, so that when it's like I can go into a room and sense the energy in the room or with a person. And obviously the energy of a person is influenced by their emotionality, but also by their thoughts and by their gut. What is going on with the person? What frequency are they sending out? What messages are they giving in the energy? And then it's just a matter of reading that And after a while, like everything, it becomes second nature to do that. So, spiritual intelligence is the recognizing that we're spiritual beings, not because someone tells us, but because we can feel the aliveness, which is the energy of ourselves. I can feel the aliveness of myself in my hands, my arms, my body. I feel the aliveness and it's energy. So that's all it is. But then I suppose we might even say spiritual intelligence, and then in a way that spiritual intelligence is, my own individual spiritual intelligence. But then what's wonderful as well is we can plug that spiritual intelligence into the big mind. So it's like plugging my standalone computer into the internet, and all of a sudden it opens up this whole domain of intelligence. Domain that's not just me, the small me. It's the I'm connecting into the big me. Now, there's lots of ways traditions language that, obviously. But in the simplest sense, I'm not just listening into my own energy. I'm recognizing that my energy, and sometimes that's the practice. I need to lift my frequency energetically through meditation and and expand it so that I connect to higher energy, so that I'm listening for inspiration, I'm listening for guidance, I'm listening for insight, which all comes, which all comes wonderfully. That's my experience. That's my experience. There's always a response. There's always like when you type something into the internet, up comes the response. Where did it come from? Where did it come from? The internet. Well, it's the same thing. So when I hold the question, or even just listen deeply into the energy, and I set my intention or even pray and say, give me some guidance here now, please. And then wait. And there's always a response. So that the quality of the response that I get is dependent on how developed my thinking mind, my feeling heart, and my instinctual gut ways of knowing are. So if they're not that well developed or even in alignment, because the gut might say one thing, the heart another, and the brain another, and then it's very confusing. So if they're not that well developed or in alignment necessarily, well, already I have mixed messages. What I get from spirit, that's just going to be more confusion. But if they're in alignment, in the sense that I have the ability and I'm open to listening to all of them, and I've developed that openness and integration, then the spiritual awareness can come in a much deeper, more profound way, and can impact me energetically in a way that I feel it in my gut, I feel it emotionally, and I know it in my mind. Now, traditionally, sometimes this was called a noetic way of knowing. Noetic. Noetic is the term. So it's a knowing beyond my individual mind, even beyond my heart, even beyond my gut, which are all individual ways of knowing. It's beyond that, So this is real spiritual intelligence, where I can access higher levels of consciousness to make my decisions and to help me live a good life in the service of others. So I hope this video helps in some way. Sometimes I just sit down and I put them out there. This is something I've been working on for years and years and years and years and years. So it's not off the cuff. It's I've developed it. I've thought it. I've reflected on it, and I've experienced it. And I hope you could feel that from the video, that sense of coherence and integrity around what I'm saying as my experience. So thank you for listening.